that food definitely can be medicine, or it can be the slowest form of poison.
Welcome to the Surf Mastery Podcast. We interview the world's best surfers and the people behind them to provide you with education and inspiration to surf better.
I want to be out here when I'm 80, hopefully still on a shortboard.
Okay, welcome to the Surf Mastery Podcast. I'm here with Chef Pete Evans. Pete is a surfer from Australia. He's known as the Paleo Chef. Pete is a TV celebrity, author of multiple books, and Pete is also a health coach as well. Pete, tell me, when you're overseas in the UK or America and people don't know you so well as a celebrity here in Australia, and they ask you the question, what do you do? How do you answer that?
I breathe. It's actually quite refreshing, when you're sort of a little bit anonymous in different parts of the world, because it changes everything. You relate to people without any preconceived judgments or opinions on who you are. It's a very strange position to be in when people think that they know you from one of your jobs that is on TV, for instance, and sometimes they get a shock when when they have a chat to you. You go, "Oh, you're very different from your role on television." And it's like, yeah, well, it's not every day that I wear a suit and judge people's food. That's just one part of my job, so to speak. So I could imagine if everyone was judged purely on the job that they did, the world would be a funny place.
Yeah. Your latest book, Going Paleo.
Yep.
It's almost like three books in one. I think you've outdone yourself, because the first 50 pages is all about nutrition, nutritional science, the background of the paleo diet, and then there's another section on health coaching, on how to integrate this new way of thinking into your life, and then the rest of the book is just awesome recipes.
Yeah, I was quite lucky when I went to write this book that I could partner with a very dear friend of mine called Nora Gagaudis. And if anyone is interested in health and nutrition, I highly recommend her book, more so than any other person that's ever written a book on health and nutrition. Her book is called Primal Body, Primal Mind. And our little, very brief, condensed version is what we've got in our Going Paleo book. It's sort of the layman's version of Nora's brilliant book. And then we go into a meal plan and how to set up your kitchen for this to work, and your pantry and your mindset. And then we've also got wonderful recipes. And I was lucky enough to have my dear friend Trevor Hendy. As you know, he's a world-renowned athlete, 7 times world champion Ironman here in Australia, that wrote the foreword for us. And Nora, Trevor, and 2 other friends of mine, one, Luke Hines, is a fitness coach, and Helen Patteran, who is a naturopath, have also teamed up with me on our 10-week Paleo Way program, which sort of basically holds people's hands through 10 weeks and gives them all the information that they need to fully understand why this way of life potentially has the ability to not only add decades onto your life, but to add a wonderful life into your years while you're still breathing. I mean, and we're completely proud of not only the books, but also the program that we've created. And so far, we've had over 30,000 people do the program. It's quite funny because the demographic I thought would be a lot younger, but it seems to be mid-40s through to mid-70s that have, I guess, been attracted or have found this program. And the results are just mind-blowing. Each and every day we just share more and more stories of people that have basically not only reclaimed their health, but they've reclaimed their life, and they're doing things that they've always wanted to do. And some of these people are in their 60s and 70s and going, thank you, I'm now pain-free or off my medication, and I'm ready to start living. And that's quite a humbling thing to be able to put out into the world as a collective group and influence so much change. And if it was one person, I'd be stoked, but it's tens of thousands of people that are improving their lives. So there's something to be said that food definitely can be medicine, or it can be the slowest form of poison.
Yeah, I second your comment on Nora's book, by the way. That's an awesome book. when you first started the paleo diet, how did that affect the way you move and the way you surf?
Wow. It was pretty instantaneous, actually. Most people that adopt this way of life, usually after 4 to 6 weeks, they notice remarkable differences. Because generally after 4 to 6 weeks of eating this way, say 100%, you start to turn yourself from being a sugar burner into a fat burner. Now, that becomes something that it becomes very freeing for you because you're no longer hungry. You can go longer without having to fuel yourself, and you start fueling yourself with the most nutritious foods on the planet. And we're seeing this with a lot of endurance athletes as well as surfers that are training hard as well, is that they're going much longer, their recovery time is much quicker, and if they've got any aches or pains or injuries, they tend to be healing a lot quicker because of the foods that we're encouraging in here. I mean, if you hear about what the football players are doing these days, is they're including the bone broths, which is basically a stock made from boiling bones and water. And they're having that in their diet daily, and it's something that we emphasise as part of our program and in our books, that you have a cup or two of bone broth per day, especially if you're an athlete, because it's just so regenerative. And it also has collagen, it has gelatin, it has glucosamine, it has potassium, it has calcium, it has magnesium in there, it's got the amino acids for your body that it thrives on. Now, couple that with small to moderate amounts of good quality, well-sourced protein from land or sea animals, an abundance of vegetables, and then the good quality fats. And then if you want to take it one step further, which is what we encourage people, we ask them to include fermented vegetables in their diet daily, if not with every meal. And what happens then is the gut starts to operate as it's meant to do. And so going back to your initial question, how did I feel and how did it affect my surfing? Well, the wonderful thing now is if I'm over in Fiji or wherever I go surfing, I'm surfing for 6 to 7 hours without stopping and without really running into fatigue that I need to go and eat anything or running out of energy. And it's absolutely brilliant. And definitely my surfing has improved. All parts of my life have improved by adopting this, and not only my life, but my children's health and how they're functioning as well is definitely to another level, as is my partner, as is my mother, as is anybody that adopts this life full-time and properly. So, yeah, my surfing is better as a 42, turning on a 43-year-old than it was as a teenager, and I have more vitality, and I feel like I've got more spring in my step. And I don't do any exercise except for the occasional jump on the trampoline with the kids or a bit of running in the park with the dog. I'm not an avid athlete by any means, but I love surfing, and that's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Awesome. And what I really like about what you're doing, Pete, is, I mean, the paleo diet is not brand new news to most people that have been looking into nutrition. But what I like what you've done is you've made it taste way better.
Thank you. It depends who's cooking it, I guess. But yeah, our recipes, we work long and hard with my team to make sure that the recipes not only taste bloody good, but are also budget friendly. The majority of them anyway, and really simple for people, especially for busy individuals or busy families. And because there's a couple of things. If it doesn't taste good, no one's going to keep doing it for a long time. And if it's too expensive or too hard, that is also going to hinder people from wanting to do it long term. So, I mean, we've written about six books so far on the topic. We've shot about over 1,000 recipes, and I tell you what, as a professional chef, and I've cooked over 1 million meals in my life with my two hands, I eat better now than I ever have, and I spend less on food now than I ever have, and it's just wonderful. And I know I've got a lot of mates that are in the top echelons of surfing, male and female, that have adopted this way of life or have adopted it before they met me or have adopted it after, and they love it and they thrive. And it's just brilliant to see. And I guarantee within 5 to 10 years, this way of life will become commonplace for athletes all around the world, which will then inspire the younger generation. So, and it's quite funny, I was watching one of the contests the other day, and one of the guys won it, and it's such a very strange world that we live in, that we celebrate with alcohol in 2016. You know, I watch these elite athletes doing what they're doing, and then to celebrate, they're having beer spilled over them or champagne spilled over them. I'm like, what sort of image is that setting for the younger generation? And I thought about the sports that do it, and you don't really see tennis players like Federer getting doused in champagne, but there's certain sports that still have that sort of mentality, that it's the alcohol and the sports go hand in hand, which in my mind is just like, wow. I mean, how many professional athletes have you seen go off the deep end because of an alcohol issue that may have been world champion or this? And I've seen it in surfing a lot. So hopefully one day that will be a thing of the past and a distant memory.
What you just said reminds me of a quote from Kelly Slater. Kelly Slater says, "I'm ridiculously strict with what I put into my mouth." Now, that's a lot. I mean, look at Kelly. He's performing at a super high level, and he's in his mid-40s.
Yep.
And you know, there's no denying with him saying things like that diet has been a massive part of his life. And when you hear him in interviews, he's always researching diet. So
yeah, Kelly actually came over with our good mate Trevor Hendy, because they're very close mates. They came over for dinner about a year ago after the Quickie Pro to our farm, and it was great having a chat with Kel about diet and lifestyle. And I mean, he's got his finger on the pulse across many things, and he's always been an inspiration for me when it comes to looking after his body and also his mindset. I think we have a lot to learn, and I love seeing Kelly on the tour. I'm not sure how long he's going to do it for, but he's definitely an inspiration, and it keeps me motivated as a punter that loves his surfs. Seeing Kelly on the tour as a mid-40s and just going nuts, you know. And I love it when I see him competing against the 18 or 20-year-olds. And I mean, he's holding his own and he's teaching them things. And what's inspiring about Kelly is that when you see a fella like that, always I think, well, anything is possible. Anything's possible. I mean, he keeps breaking the barriers and breaking the rules or what is thought of. And I think he's a great ambassador, not only for surfing, but human beings in general.
Yeah. There must have been something that Kelly had adopted earlier on, nutrition, you know, because he's got that longevity for so long. So he's obviously been looking after his nutrition for a while.
Well, I think he probably witnessed, you know, Tom Carroll, some of the older generation that are fit, really respect their bodies, respect especially nutrition and what it can do for you, for sure. So yeah, hats off. And it's interesting. I'm watching the younger generation as well of the surfers. I love watching the surfing contests and seeing how they potentially are changing their diets as well and their workout routines and whatever it may be. And you know, it's definitely a different ball game these days for athletes than it was a decade or two ago.
Yeah. If you want to be at the top, you've got to look after your nutrition.
Well, it's for me. I mean, I surf Cabarita a lot, and I grew up on the Goldie surfing, and when I'm out there, I'm looking. I mean, I'm usually got the biggest grin on my face, but what I love about surfing or skiing or snowboarding is that it's something you can do with your kids. And I've got a 9 and 11-year-old daughter, and they've been surfing since they were 4, and they're getting good now. And I just look forward. I want to be surfing with their kids, potentially surfing with their grandkids one day. And when I'm out there at Cabra and I see some of the older fellas out there, I'm just totally inspired by them going, you know what, I want to be out here when I'm 60. I want to be out here when I'm 70. I want to be out here when I'm 80. hopefully still on a shortboard,
Yeah.
and catching waves and having fun, and hopefully inspiring the youngsters as well. Because you look at a lot of sports that are played, or you see a lot of sports that are actually watched. Your football is a classic one. I mean, how many players do you see in their 40s or 50s still playing footy? How many players do you see in different sports in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s still getting out there and having a go? And surfing is one of those things, like skiing or snowboarding, as I mentioned, that it seems to keep people young. Because it isn't that full contact sport where you're punishing your body. It's really something about it that's very grounding, very meditative, very nurturing for our bodies and recharging. And I think being in the ocean, I've read a wonderful book called Earthing. And if you've never heard about earthing before, I recommend you search it out and Google it, because it just makes perfect common sense that our connection with the earth, for a lot of us, is completely lost. Whereas when you immerse yourself in the ocean, I mean, you are picking up these wonderful minerals, wonderful energetic vibrations, if you want to call it that, and it's just doing your body really, really, really good.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I'm all into earthing, and that's part of the reason I think why surfing is so healthy, because you're very earthed. Yeah.
And it's great for the mind too.
Yeah. I encourage anyone who hasn't looked into earthing just to do a little bit of research on it, and some things will click about what our modern lifestyle has taken us away from that, and it can be detrimental. So yeah, surfing is earthing for sure. Now, what's a typical breakfast for you, Pete?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it changes every day depending on what I've got on, but generally when you adopt this way of life after about 4 to 6 weeks, you sort of feel like eating 1 to 2, so maybe 3 meals per day, and that's it. So breakfast is generally last night's leftovers. It's I usually cook up a big batch of food whenever I do cook it, whether it's in the day or at night time, and I'll eat the same thing that I've eaten the night before for the next morning. Generally, though, I'll go out for a surf in the morning and I won't eat prior to going out. And then when I get home, it might be 10 o'clock and I'll have a meal then, and then probably another meal about 4 or 5. And again, it comes down to a moderate amount of animal protein from land or sea, an abundance of vegetables, good quality fats in the form of avocados or olives or nuts or seeds or eggs, or the fat from the animals. And then some daily bone broth and some fermented vegetables. It's a pretty simple formula. And when you start to look at a meal like that, sort of the labels disappear, whether it's breakfast, lunch or dinner. It just becomes a meal that you eat whenever you feel like eating it. And because when you eat this way, as I talked about before, being a fat burner, you actually can go a good 12 to 16 hours, if not longer, without feeling hungry and the need to eat. It's hard to describe, but it's a very enjoyable feeling, that's for sure. And it sort of brings into this intermittent fasting by default, where you go for a period of time having a fast. And that's basically the paleo default, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm the same. I tend to surf in the morning, and I can say I never feel like I'm lacking in energy, even though I haven't had breakfast. And I've been on the paleo diet for a good 10 years now, and I tend to eat brunch and dinner, and that's it. That's common,
but it might sound weird for anyone that's listening that has never experienced that, because when you're a sugar burner, and I'll just quickly describe what the sugar burner is. It's when your diet consists mainly of grains and starches and sugary foods. For instance, the typical Australian or Western diet is very sugar heavy. So we start off with cereal or bread in the morning, and mid-morning, 2 hours later, you're usually quite hungry. You want a little a biscuit or a muesli bar or something to get you through to lunch. Lunchtime comes, you're having a sandwich or some rice or sushi or whatever it may be. Mid-afternoon, you go into a crash. you need something to pick you up, and that might be alcohol. It might be alcohol for some, or it could be coffee for others. And then dinner time comes, and once upon a time it used to be meat and 3 veg, which is what paleo is, whereas now it'll be pasta, or it'll be rice, or it'll be something that is very distant from what our grandparents would have eaten. And then there might be dessert on top of that. So every 2 to 3 hours you're having grains turn to sugar in the body, as you know, sort of legumes. So you're constantly on this sugar hit. And that's why a lot of athletes end up with type 2 diabetes, because they've been carving up the whole time for decades. And then all of a sudden the body craps out and goes, you know what, you're either pre-diabetic or you're now a type 2 diabetic. And then that's usually when they discover paleo and go, we can reverse this. And but to give you an example of a breakfast or a meal, it can be as simple as a piece of steak or a piece of fish with an abundance of vegetables or salad. I mean, it's that simple. Include some fermented vegetables that you can get at any health food store these days if you don't want to make it yourself, and have a cup of broth per day. And that's it. I mean, the most common paleo meals in the world are classic Aussie barbecues. Just get rid of the bread. Or classic roasts. That's what paleo is. It's fish and salad. It's steak and salad, or steak and veggies. It can be as simple as that. You don't need the fancy bread substitutes or fancy cakes or anything like that. It always is really, really simple, very nutritious, very nutrient-dense foods. There's an interesting thing as well that I try to encourage people to try and get out of their comfort zone, and that is eating offal. So we're talking about liver or kidneys or heart. The interesting fact, it has 10 to 100 times more nutrients than, say, a piece of steak. So for vitamin K2, vitamin A, vitamin C, even in liver, vitamin D, all of these beautiful fat-soluble vitamins are all contained in this. So I'd encourage anyone that's really passionate about what they eat to discover or investigate offal from well-sourced animals.
10 to 100 times.
That's it. It is the superfood. And I know it's a bit squeamish for a lot of people, but if you think back to how our grandparents ate, or our ancient hunter-gatherers, I mean, they've thrived on this stuff. I mean, a lot of children and babies were fed a lot of these foods as their first foods as well, and not going back that many generations either. But we've sort of lost our connection with what we are, and we are animals, and we're omnivorous, and we have always been hunter-gatherers. And I tell you what, any of our ancient ancestors would have gone for the offal before anything else, because they knew that it was the most nutritious part of the animal.
Yeah. My favourite is lamb's brains.
Sensational. And it's funny, I'm being a chef, and every chef loves cooking with it, loves cooking with offal.
Yeah.
Because we just know how much flavour it has, and it's sort of it's a badge of honour to be able to cook with it. So if you're interested, get into it.
How good is sweetbreads?
Oh, sensational. Stop it.
Yeah. Oh, sweetbreads and lamb brains are my favourite. And the best thing is you go to the butcher and they almost give them away.
Yeah, it's dirt cheap.
Yeah, get into your offal. Definitely. I think eating seasonally is very important.
It just makes sense. I mean, a lot of this stuff is common sense that we're talking about, but we sort of, as a society, have, as I said before, have lost our connection with what it means to be our species, so to speak, and how we live. But that's not to say that we can't combine the best of the 21st century with the knowledge from our ancestors as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I love to view it. I mean, we do live in, I think, the best of the ages. We have modern medicine, but we also have ancient wisdom, and it's that combination of both. If we choose to delve there and meld the two together, that we can have the best fun. I mean, it's nearly like surfboard design. I was looking at Instagram last night, and Tomo surfboards or Firewire surfboards, and there was a wonderful picture of a board shaped in the 1950s, I think, a timber board, and it basically was identical to his new Evos, and a little 5'6" number or something like that, and there was 50 or 60 years in the difference between the two boards, but they looked so identical. So, and that's what I love about surfing at the moment as well, is we really are looking back and acknowledging and respecting where the sport came from, but also embracing the future as well.
Yeah.
And it's, that's why I want to be surfing in another 40, 50 years, because I just can't wait to see where the sport goes.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to the surfing thing. So let's say you're on a weekend surf trip. How do you approach your nutrition in that situation when you're away from anywhere where you can cook?
Well, generally I try to be able to cook wherever I go. I'm quite lucky. I've got the dear friends in Fiji, Scotty and Mandy, that have Namotu Island Resort, and I've cooked on the island many times for their guests, and we've become dear friends. And for instance, I go surfing there for a week, and whether I'm cooking there or not, but they accommodate really good food. And again, it's a simple formula. Wherever you go, if you can eat good quality animal protein from the land or sea, whether it's seafood or land-based animals, with an abundance of vegetables or salad, you're doing really well. I mean, that's all you have to do. Paleo is about removing any foods that can cause the body to have an inflammatory response. Okay, and the most common culprits, and this is why paleo works across the board for so many ailments, is grains, especially gluten-containing grains, dairy, and legumes. So they're the three most common culprits that can cause a response in the body which causes inflammation. If you have an autoimmune issue, then you may need to take out eggs, nuts, seeds, and nightshade vegetables. And nightshades are potatoes, tomatoes, capsicums, chilies, eggplants, for a period of time. And by doing that, you're left with what I just mentioned before. You're left with good quality proteins from land or sea, and you're left with an abundance of vegetables and good quality fats. So you don't have to make it too difficult. So wherever you are in the world, you can eat this way, because it's how we've always eaten. Wherever you are, I guarantee it, you can always get yourself a piece of meat or seafood and salad or vegetables in any restaurant, in any supermarket. So there's all it comes down to is a choice. Bacon and eggs, sensational, as a choice as well. Put some greens on there, whether it be an avocado or some broccoli or some zucchini, and you have one of the most nutritious breakfasts in the world.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be hard. That's what I'm saying, and it shouldn't take too much thought. Maybe a little bit of preparation. If you're at the local surf club, get the prawn platter and a salad, or a bucket of prawns and a salad, or get the steak and salad. I mean, you can eat like this at RSLs, at surf clubs, if you're camping or going on a camping trip. Awesome. Take your meat or take your seafood, get an esky, and just get some fresh vegetables, and you're laughing, and some eggs and maybe some bacon. I tell you what, there is nothing better than having, as I said, for breakfast before a dinner. If we can take the label out of breakfast, lunch, or dinner and just look at it as food in that context, then you can eat like a king for breakfast, lunch, or dinner each and every day.
Yeah. I like the word preparation. Yeah, so there's no harm in taking some leftover dinner in a container in the car for a surf trip.
Not at all. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cold curry the next day, or cold stir fry, or leftover roast, or some chicken drumsticks that you've roasted in the oven. Absolutely delicious. Hard-boiled eggs, great snack.
Yep. Now, what about all these nut bars that seem to be pretty popular in all the cafes, and they seem to label them paleo? What do you think of those?
I view anything that doesn't fit into the moderate amount of meat with lots of vegetables and good quality fats as a treat.
Yeah.
If the vegetables aren't the main part of your meal, then I would be viewing anything that's outside of that realm as a treat. So the paleo bars, the paleo cookies, the paleo breads, anything like that, I would be seeing that as a treat, and it shouldn't take up a large part of your diet. But, as a snack, if you're on the road trip or something like that, and you want to grab, I think they're dinosaur bars or paleo bars or chief bars, fantastic. They're probably better. Oh, I know they're better for you than a cherry ripe or a Mars bar or something like that, or a packet of chips.
Yeah.
So, fantastic. It definitely is a solution for some people that want that snack. But again, why not just buy a bag of macadamia nuts or something like that, and buy a bag of carrots or some cucumbers or a bunch of celery and eat that as well.
What do you think of ghee?
Well, ghee's dairy. It's a clarified butter. What we know about dairy is that 70% of the population can't really tolerate it that well. So 7 in 10 people, dairy isn't your friend. Add to the fact that most dairy in Australia is grain-fed. So here we have an issue where our cattle is being fed a diet that it hasn't evolved to eat. Now, when that happens, what has to happen to the animal, or what generally happens, is that they potentially will get sick. So then they include antibiotics into their feed as well, or into the animal itself. Now, what happens with those antibiotics that get put into the animal, especially if you're drinking the milk or eating the meat from that animal, you're going to get some of that into your system. So on a planetary sustainability viewpoint, the dairy industry is probably, in my opinion, one of the worst industries in the world to support. But in saying that, there are some wonderful dairy farming operations that are organic, that are holistic, that are sustainable. But is there anything that you're getting in dairy that you can't get in better sources, such as the offal or the good quality meats, or from other quality fats? No, I think dairy is a poorer choice, and it has, as I said before, 7 out of 10 people have an issue with it. So I can't recommend it, just because I know that so many people are better off without it. And the funny thing with dairy is a lot of people don't want to give it up, and they have this emotional attachment to it. And that's because what the studies have showed is that the proteins actually can break through the blood-brain barrier and sort of attach themselves to opiates. So you get this pleasure sensation when you're having dairy, or in any form, whether it be ghee or however. And that's why people freak out when you say, why don't you try giving up dairy for, say, 10 weeks? And this is what I say to anyone. If you don't believe a word that I've said tonight, why don't you give up dairy and grains and legumes for the next 10 weeks and then see how you feel? And I guarantee within 4 to 6 weeks you'll be a new person, no matter how old you are. And then put some of those foods back into your diet and then see how you feel. Your body will never lie. And I guarantee that you'll probably go, you know what, maybe I'm better off without those foods.
Yeah, there you go, surfers. The challenge is laid down. 10 weeks, no processed food, no dairy. Do it. Try it. I can't recommend it enough. And it can be literally that simple, right?
Well, it's pretty simple. A lot of people are in a situation where possibly they can't do it all at once. They might have their family involved, so they might have some kids, and changing their whole diet in one foul swoop is going to bring a lot of stress to the family.
Yeah.
So I always say, well, maybe just start with one meal a week. Maybe just have that roast, and then maybe the second week have the roast again, and then another night have a barbecue night, and then the third week maybe include the third paleo meal, and then after 7 or 8 weeks, when you're sort of doing this and you're cooking in bulk, you'll basically become paleo by default. Some people want to do it straight away because they need to, because they're feeling sluggish or they've got major health or minor health issues. So they're just like, you know what, stuff it. I've tried everything else. I'll give this a red hot shot. And if for those people that do want to do it, I'd say go in 100% and see how you feel. But other people that have different situations or different circumstances where they feel like it's too hard to do it all at once, then that's sweet as well. I mean, you've been doing what you've been doing for the last decade or 3 decades or 10 decades or 6 decades, or maybe if you were 100, then maybe you're doing something right anyway. So
yeah.
Don't feel like you need to change anything. And I'm not here to change anyone. I'm just here to encourage people to potentially look at their diet if they're not feeling 100%.
Yeah, I'll second that, definitely. I like the fact you're talking about the anti-inflammatory side of it, because that just makes sense. I mean, anyone who's aware of their body knows when something is inflamed, it doesn't feel good, it's weaker, and you just don't surf as well. So an anti-inflammatory diet is the way forward.
Well, this is what paleo is. It takes out the inflammatory foods, or the foods that eventually cause the inflammation in the body. I mean, the amount of people that have some form of arthritis that have shared their story with me after doing our 10 weeks and said the pain is gone, or I've reduced my medication by that much. I mean, people with rheumatoid arthritis or autoimmune issues, multiple sclerosis, we are seeing that people are improving. This is not a cure for anything. And I put my hand on my heart, but I definitely say that it is helping people improve their life and improve these symptoms. But if you went back to eating the foods that you were eating before, then you're going to end up where you were originally. But for a lot of people, type 2 diabetics, people with autoimmune, as I told you, they're discovering that they're getting on top of their symptoms and managing them so that basically they're non-existent anymore. Which, I mean, you cannot deny that when I've had so many people come up to me and show me their hands, and they said, for 10 years I couldn't move my joints, and now I can. And it was as simple as following what you just said. And I didn't discover this, as you know, you've been doing this for 10 years. I've been doing this for five and a half years. My girlfriend was reading a book, the Nora Gagaudis book, and said, you might want to read this. And I've met people that have been doing this for 20 years, 25 years, 15 years. Absolutely brilliant. And I've, the last couple of years, travelled the world interviewing doctors, professors, scientists, researchers, athletes, naturopaths, farmers, that are all speaking the same language. They mightn't call it paleo, but if you pull back the cover of what they're actually teaching, it by definition it is paleo. It is removing the inflammatory foods. So if you have any inflammation, then I tell you what, this is a bloody good place to start. It may not be the be-all and end-all, because food is only one of the ingredients for the recipes of life, as I like to call it. You need to look at your sleep patterns. You need to look at how you move. A lot of people overtrain. A lot of people undertrain. A lot of people move their body in a way that is torturous for it. And then you also need to look at your relationships and your career, or where you are, your social interaction, whether you're giving back to the community. I mean, all of these impact how we feel and whether we have ease in our life or dis-ease in our life. So, but food is one of the things that you can choose to change today. As I say, a lot of people are in a job that potentially isn't giving them the joy that they thought it would give them, and they can't leave that today. Some people are in a relationship and they might be stuck there financially or for emotional reasons that they can't change it, which definitely we understand. But food is the one thing that you can take control of today. Everyone can change how they eat, except for the very young, or the children, or the invalid, or the people that need carers. And that is why I really try to make this well known, especially for new parents or grandparents, about how they can feed their children to help them thrive, so that when they become adults, they're not going to repeat the same processes that a lot of parents have done over the last couple of generations, which is why we have a society that's overweight, which is why we have a society that's chronically ill and getting worse each and every year.
Yeah. Now, people listening to this podcast have probably picked up enough information to start applying some of the paleo principles. But if they wanted to learn more, obviously you've got your book, Going Paleo, which we mentioned, which is a great book, and I highly recommend it. And it's got loads of recipes and guidelines in there as well to implement it into your life. We mentioned Nora's book, Primal Body, Primal Mind, if you're interested in learning a little bit more of the nitty-gritty details. Could you point us, have you got a website or anything else?
Yeah, it's our 10-week program where you'll get all the information is thepaleoa.com, and there's also peteevans.com, which is my website. But also jump onto our social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook. Facebook, we've got 1.5 million followers approximately, and it is Chef Pete Evans, which is pretty easy to find. Each and every day I share another success story from somebody that has adopted our program, and I've been doing this for years, sharing stories each and every day, so much so that it doesn't seem miraculous anymore. It just seems the normal, that people just get better from debilitating chronic illness on a daily basis. And it's always the same old story. We've seen that many doctors that couldn't help us, and all we did was change our diet, and within 3 to 6 months we are feeling 100 times better. Now, I'm not saying it's going to work for everyone, but I haven't met anybody or heard of anyone that this has not improved their lives for. So that's a pretty good success rate so far.
Yeah. If you get rid of inflammation and you improve your energy levels, you're going to surf better, and you're going to surf shortboard until you're 70.
Maybe 80.
Maybe even
goal.
80. Awesome.
So I hope to see everyone out at the surf. Say good day to us. I'm usually the guy with the biggest smile, dropping into some of the worst waves. I'm not a great surfer, but I'm a grom at heart, and I froth over every time I get to go out there.
Awesome. Before you go, what's your favourite board?
I'm riding the Firewire Tomos at the moment, and I'm loving them. I've got a Vader and the Evo, and I've just ordered a couple of the new Slater designs to take over to Fiji later this year. I've got my kids on them, and for me, I can catch waves really easily on them, and I'm surfing. Well, I think I'm surfing better than I ever have. I could just be dreaming, but I love them. They've come around at the right time for me. Before that, I was riding chili boards, which I loved as well. I like experimenting with different boards. Sometimes I'm on a mini mal if it's 1 foot, and I'm out there with my girlfriend. And I ride foam boards as well. My kids live in Bondi, and you'll often see me at North Bondi between the flags with my kids, and we're riding the catch surf or something like that. The Jamie O'Brien models.
Oh, yeah.
Or the Chipper Wilson. I've got one of the stumps, and it goes nuts.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I ride a multitude of boards, and I love body surfing too.
Yeah, cool. Okay, what's your favourite surf vid?
I don't think you could go past Kelly Slater, Black and White, or Taj Burrows, Fair Bits. And the new John Florence, View from a Blue Moon, that was pretty special, and Strange Rumblings and Shangri-La and the Kai Neville films. I froth on all of them, so pretty spectacular.
Awesome. Who's your favourite surfer?
Me. No, in actual fact, it's my kids. I just love watching them improve every day, and they're catching their own waves now. They're 9 and 11, and I've never really pushed them. I've just gentle does it, and I just love watching them surf. And now that I can surf with them and my girlfriend, and the 4 of us go out, I'm stoked when I'm surfing by myself, but nothing compares to being able to surf with your family, and it's something that I look forward to doing, as I said, for many decades, and I can't wait to surf with my grandkids and great-grandkids one day either.
Yep, awesome. And if the waves are pumping, is there a particular song or album you like to listen to?
Narco and Medicine for the People, or Spearhead, is generally the 2 bands that resonate with me when I'm out in the surf. If you've never heard of Narco, he's a mate of mine. He's from the United States. He's a surfer who now resides in Hawaii. Very emotional, very grounding, very connected music. He eats very well, and he's connected to spirit, he's connected to the land, he's connected to the ocean, and he's connected to the people that listen to his music. So Narco and Medicine for the People travels around Australia every year. One of the best concerts you'll ever see.
Awesome. Awesome. Oh, well, Pete, thanks so much for doing this. And I'm going to put links to all of the stuff you mentioned in the show notes, links to your website, your book, etc. So those that are listening in their car can just go back to the website and check out those links. Thanks again, Pete. Awesome.
Thanks for listening, and hope to see you all in the surf. Give us a
Thank you.
wave.
Thanks for tuning in to the Surf Mastery podcast. Again, I'm your host, Michael Frampton. Make sure you subscribe so you can keep up to date with the latest interviews. Please share with your friends. Check us out on Facebook at Surf Mastery Surf. And if you're on iTunes, please go and give us a little rating. That'd be awesome. Until next time, keep surfing.